Hey, Brent, can you make sure that you're admitting people, please, for me now? Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started now as everyone's filtering in. I am Ashley Fick, your moderator for today. I'm the Civic Engagement Librarian for Johnson County Library. I just want to take a moment and thank all of you for attending on this beautiful, sunny, lovely spring day and being here instead of outside enjoying it. We thank you. And also thank you to our legislators for being here on this lovely spring day. We really appreciate it. We think it's important. So just a couple of housekeeping issues. We have a link to a form for you to submit your questions to. Please use that form. If you have any question for the legislator, that's how we'll filter it through and get your questions asked. We invite every legislator to participate in these that has constituents in Johnson County. And also the event today features closed captioning. So if that's a feature you need, we have it for you. We're going to go ahead and get started with the legislators. They've each got 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Hillary down in the corner is our timekeeper, so you'll see her flashing. And with that, we'll go ahead and start. I don't have a predetermined order for you, so whoever wants to go first, I'll let you fight for it.
Maybe we'll just go around the circle then, since I'm in the upper left. So my name is Jarrod Ousley. I represent House District 24. This is my 7th legislative session, originally elected in 2014. I'm currently serving on Children and Seniors as a ranking member. Again, I am on K-12 budget this year for the first time on the budget committee, and local government again. Just a brief overview of committee work. K-12, we've spent a lot of time trying to block what I would consider to be bad policy. Some of you might be familiar with the HB 2119 mixing policy and appropriations. It's got a voucher package in it. It expands our tax credit scholarship. It passed on the floor in the House just last week, but we did our best to block it in committee, and we just simply didn't have the numbers. Children and Seniors, we were able to get the Office of the Child Advocate out of committee. Some of you have been following that work over the years. I think it's three or 4 years worth of work, certainly 4 sessions, 2 interims, if not 3 interims, a lot of input from a lot of stakeholders. And unfortunately, the Speaker of the House did not bless that bill. So there's currently a Senate version, which my colleague in the Senate has done a fine job of pointing out the flaws in it and not allowing it to be stated as an equal bill to the House version. I can't thank him enough for his work in committee on that. So we'll see where that one goes. Local government has been all about Wichita this year. But I think the more overriding message that I think I've seen this year that I haven't seen before, when I was elected in 2014, there were 97 Republicans and 28 Democrats. Currently, there's 86 Republicans and 39 Democrats. So we've been lower in numbers before, but we've never, this is the first Democratic governor I've ever served under, the Kelly administration. And I've not ever seen just the power grabs that we've watched occur, whether it was the House is what appeared to be first order of business and getting a constitutional amendment out to strip 50% of Kansans of their health rights, or it was the Emergency Management Act to strip the governor of her emergency authorities. We've put a lot of power into the LCC. We've added an additional member to the LCC, to the Senate appropriating the work of the Office of Child Advocate. So this is unlike anything I've ever seen in my 7 years. But I appreciate y'all being here this morning, and thank my colleagues for being here, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
I'll go next since I'm Jarrod's office mate. I'm Linda Featherston. I represent the 16th district. That's from 95th Street to 127th, Plum to 69 Highway. I am honored to represent the Shawnee Mission, Olathe, and Blue Valley school districts. Education is the foundation of why I ran, and so I'm so pleased to have all of those districts plus the community college inside my district. As I said, I room with Representative Ousley, and he's certainly been a big help to me here in my first term in the legislature. I serve on local government, education, and the agriculture committee. And I know we're all thinking, why is a girl in the middle of the city sitting on the ag committee? And I have to say, I love that committee. It's my favorite by far, in that everybody gets along and works together to find reasonable solutions. And I feel like if we can do that in the ag committee, we should be able to pull that off on the House floor. Unfortunately, we have not been able to pull that off on the House floor. And I'm extremely concerned about the education bill. It's stripping a lot of funds out of education and funneling them over, like, public tax dollars to private schools. And while I respect every family's right to school their child however they see fit, we need to protect that public school safety net for every child. In my work, I work with children that are homeschooled, private schooled, and public schooled, and kids in every one of those settings I have seen benefit from the special services that our public schools have to offer. And I would just hate to see any of our special ed, our arts programs, or any of our extra programs hurt or cut back because we're funneling away these tax dollars. So I'm very hopeful that we will try to work together for the benefit of all children to reinforce our public school safety net. Thank you.
I can go next to round out the representatives on the call. I'm Representative Lindsay Vaughn. I represent House District 22, which is in Northern Overland Park, from about 75th to 95th and Metcalf to 69 Highway. And I serve on the Water Committee, which was reformed this year. So I'll probably focus most on that because I actually really enjoy that committee. And then I'm on Children and Seniors with the Honorable Representative Ousley, who's our ranking and did a wonderful job of describing our work on that committee. And then I also serve on Social Services Budget, which has been interesting, working on, as Jarrod said, with a Democratic governor, but a Republican supermajority legislature. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. For water, it's been really interesting because we're all kind of starting from the same spot since the committee was reformed. So we've done a lot of information gathering. We've talked to all the agencies that have water jurisdiction. And we've also brought in some non-governmental organizations to talk with us as well, to both learn about the structure of water management in Kansas, and then, how we can improve the quality and quantity of water over time, since it's such a critical resource and since we're an agricultural state. So that's been really interesting. We are meeting in the interim to form more of a plan for what we want to accomplish in the following session, or the following year, I should say. So if you have any questions about water or love water like me, feel free to reach out. And then, like I said, I'll skip over Children and Seniors. I just want to give a shout out to Representative Ousley. He did a phenomenal job with the Office of the Child Advocate, and he's put so much work into that. And I really hope that in the coming year, we can see even more progress on that. And then for Social Services Budget, it's been interesting. And I think this ties into one of the broader themes that we've seen as well. But the Republican supermajority is very hesitant to expand Medicaid. And that's something that a lot of us have been pushing for. And so in Social Services Budget, it's been pretty clear that they will not hear or work any bills that could be amended with Medicaid expansion. So that's limited the types of bills that we've been able to work in that committee. Although we did do some good work, I'm really focused on the IDD waitlist in the IDD community, the intellectual and developmental disability, and we did put in a proviso to increase the reimbursement rate for that Medicaid expansion waiver or Medicaid waiver for IDD to 150%. So that was really good, and I think the committee's done good work. So I think I'm coming up on time here. I would just, add that as a young woman in the legislature, I'm also really focused on issues for women and families. And so I've been focused on a bill that will increase access to childcare. So if you're interested and that's something you care about, please let me know as well, because that potentially will still land on the floor with the hopes of getting that passed this year. So I will stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, I'm Senator Ethan Corson. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Johnson County Public Library for putting on this event. It's such a great opportunity for us to hear from folks in the community, and I appreciate everybody who joined us on this Saturday. I really welcome your feedback, and I'm looking forward to the question part of this. So I represent Senate District 7 in the Kansas Senate. So that is Northeast Johnson County. We go from State Line to Metcalf, and then from 47th Street to 99th Street. I serve on the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Utilities Committee, and the Tax Committee. I'm also a member of the Joint Committee on Legislative Post-Audit. But I want to use this beginning time to talk about 3 issues that I think are really have been at the top of my mind. The first is the voter suppression bills that are going through the Senate, and I know have also been worked on the House side. These are bills that really would have the effect of making it harder for voters of color, military voters stationed overseas, voters in rural areas, disabled voters to do the most fundamental thing in our democracy, which is to cast their vote and have it counted. So I spoke out against these bills, both in the committee and on the Senate floor. I'm going to continue to fight against them. There is potential this week that we may hear on the Senate floor another voter suppression bill. And to me, this is so disappointing because when you have the NAACP, you have a group of nuns, you have the disability rights community all lined up saying that these bills are going to limit voting access. I think it's really time to reevaluate your priorities. We saw what happened yesterday with Major League Baseball deciding to pull the All-Star game out of Georgia because of the voter suppression bills there. I worry that that is a similar path that we're headed down for Kansas. And it's especially disappointing because we're coming off a really successful election cycle where under incredibly challenging circumstances, we had election officials, poll workers, volunteers, all come together to have a safe, secure, and fraud-free election. None of these changes were asked for by the Secretary of State's office. None of these changes were asked for by any local election officials. There's been no evidence of fraud in any Kansas elections. So I remain troubled and just would ask everybody on this event to remain vigilant and reach out to your legislators and let them know that you want Kansas to be a place where we continue to have safe, secure, open, and transparent elections. So thank you, and I look forward to the questions.
Sorry, it's always a trial for me to try and unmute myself. You would think I would get better by now, but I haven't. What will be the legislative process to ensure that the drawing of the district boundaries will be fair and reasonable, and that they take into account communities of interest, compactness, and continuity?
I mean, I will start by just saying that I am worried about that process because I'm worried that we run the risk of having gerrymandered legislative districts. I do think it's really important. It's important for us here in the Kansas City metro area to understand that it is critical that our congressional seat, that we do not divide Johnson County. I think that would really affect our ability to have strong representation at the federal level and to really speak with the unified voice. So I've seen maps bandied about that would have Johnson County split in half and have part of it in one congressional district, part of it in another. I think that that would be a really bad thing because we are one community with shared interests, shared goals, and we want to have a representative who can advance our collective interests. So that's one of the things I've been pushing for that I think is a nonpartisan issue, is keeping that congressional district, keeping Johnson County all in one congressional district. But I am worried about what we could see at the state level with attempts to gerrymander the congressional and the state legislative districts. I know that there's a committee on the House side. There's not yet been a committee formed on the Senate side, but it is something that remains for me of very significant concern.
I'd chime in just that I'm not sure how often that committee is meeting, but ultimately I think it'll be up to House leadership how it goes. I would just remind the viewers and participants that I believe it's in our Constitution, not in statute, that our redistricting maps have to be approved by the courts. And this will be my first redistricting go around as an elected. I believe last time the courts went in and they picked the least gerrymandered district that the legislature had drawn. But I agree with Ethan, and that, you know, just back to my comments earlier, I've not seen any power grabs like this. So I think with that theme building up as we come towards the drawing of those maps, it should be concerning. And I hope we're all paying close attention to it.
The only thing I would add to that is just the timeline. So we had originally thought that we would see the first maps by the end of this legislative session. And there was a bit of a delay in receiving that census data. So it's my understanding that that'll either happen in the interim or beginning of next year. So I believe we'll be working redistricting in the next session next year.
Yeah, I don't have really anything different to add except to say I'm extremely concerned about how the boundaries are going to be drawn. And I would advise you all to keep an eye on, and if you start seeing shapes that don't look very natural, that's an indication that gerrymandering is occurring. And we have to speak up and speak for the rights of people to vote and for those votes to be represented properly.
You know, one thing I'll close on was just that what was really concerning to me and what was kind of a big warning signal was Governor Kelly a while ago when we were first starting the redistricting conversation said, let's have a nonpartisan commission. Let's put together a nonpartisan commission and have them draw the map so we keep politics totally out of this. And it was Republicans who completely shot that idea down and said, no, we don't want to have a nonpartisan commission. We want to do this in a really partisan way. So that's what put me on alert that this could be problematic. And again, like Representative Featherston said, I think we all need to follow this closely.
Okay. A slate of voter suppression bills have been introduced this year. Our 2020 election was one of the safest and most secure elections we've ever had. These voter suppression bills would have caused over 30,000 ballots to be thrown out in 2020. What can we do to stop these bills from becoming law?
I'll speak up since my election was the closest of all. You might remember when we finished election day, I was up by 4 votes. And between that and when all the advanced ballots were counted, we went up 14, down 1, and won by 67 votes. No district represents the importance of every vote being counted more than my district. We had 3 races that were very close. And I just think we need to be careful to respect these votes. And you can contact your legislator. And if you feel like your legislator is not in favor of voting rights, it's a great idea to copy somebody who you feel does respect voting rights. I think we need to be preparing for the next election. Watch how your legislators are voting. And if their value of voting doesn't reflect your value of voting, you need to get out there and get yourself a new representative or senator.
Senator Corson. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add that that's occurring nationwide. You know, we've watched it in Georgia. I'm part of a council of state governments group, and when we had our meeting virtually the other day, things that are occurring in Kansas are occurring nationwide. It's like a broad sweep, a broad plan. So, I mean, obviously we'll do the best we can, and please chime in how you see necessary. Keep on them, like Linda said. Thank you.
All right, Senator Corson, thank you for your work to create drug abuse treatment programs for people on diversion. Did Senate Bill 3 pass, and how might that impact juvenile offenders? Do child advocates get involved with juvenile justice issues?
So I believe we've had so many bills have been combined in weird ways. I believe that did pass the Senate. The full Senate. So it passed out of where I was, which was on the Senate Judiciary Committee, passed out of the full Senate. I don't believe it's yet been passed by the full House. That may be something that they may take up this week. But essentially what that bill would do is just expand the accessibility of diversion programs for folks who have drug abuse issues makes a lot of sense. And, you know, the way it came to us and was described, which I agreed with, is we have way too many folks who are in the criminal justice system who are not violent, are not of a criminal nature. They really have a drug abuse problem. And what we really need to focus on is getting them the treatment that they need so they can go out and become the productive citizens that many of them could be if they were able to get past this challenge in their life. And that's really what this bill does. As far as expanding it to children, the bill really doesn't focus on juveniles as much as it does adults. It really increases the number of adult offenders who are going to be eligible for this program. I think that is a good point that we could look to expanding it to youth going forward. Would be very open to that idea. But I was proud that we were able to at least make this progress this session.
All right, and this one is directed to Representative Vaughn. However, I think probably there's several other legislators that might want to speak to it. Representative Vaughn, how does the lack of affordable housing impact children and seniors in Kansas?
Yeah, that is a great question. And, you know, I think it's hard because when we bring up affordable housing legislation at the state level, we always get told, oh, that's a municipal issue, that's a zoning issue. When I think we really need to look at it from a broad perspective, and that starts at the state level. So, you know, seniors want to age in place. They need to be able to afford housing where they're living. And as they are on a fixed income, that becomes significantly harder. And so looking at things like, you know, the Medicaid reimbursement rate for home and community-based services and things like that, by increasing that reimbursement rate, we're able to help seniors age in place and stay in their homes, which is really where they want to be and where they will receive the best care. And so that's kind of what the area of focus is for seniors. And then for kids, you know, I think that would fall more under the scope of foster care. And we've also taken a look at that. We've seen a number of bills that would keep families together in foster care so that kids can keep a roof over their head as well. The most recent that we worked was creating exemptions for juvenile adjudication so that kids who had minor offenses, when they turn 18, they're not then removed from their foster home, even though they pose no threat, which was a huge flaw that was still happening to this day. So we just passed that out of the House, thankfully, and that committee this year has done a lot of great work. So really hope that we can keep more kids in their homes and more seniors in their homes as well.
So I'll chime in. A constituent brought AARP accessory dwelling units model legislation to my attention, and I've met with the national AARP and the state AARP to discuss it. And what they are is like mother-in-law's units, if you will, to allow seniors affordable housing in suburban areas. So while they may not be able to age in their home, they can still age with their family and they can still have independence. So we're going to start that conversation hopefully over the interim and see what sort of pushbacks and what sort of, you know, reality we could bring it to.
And then this might be of interest to anyone in the audience. The League of Women Voters of Johnson County is holding an event on Thursday, April 8th at 6 p.m. to learn about housing, the Johnson County Municipalities Community Housing Study. Panel members from Johnson County Health Equity Network and the United Community Services of Johnson County will drill down on the complexities of overcoming barriers and present opportunities for Johnson County. We'll put the link in the chat. So if anyone's interested in that, please feel free to attend. And our next question is directed to Representative Featherston, but I believe that this will also be a question that might be of interest to other representatives and senators. It feels like Kansas is taking steps backwards when it comes to educating our students. Can you tell us about the work of the Education Committee this session?
In the Education Committee, we deal with policy issues and things like that. And I would agree we are taking some steps back, mainly because the legislature, with bills coming out of the Ed Committee, is stepping into curriculum decisions. And those decisions do not belong to the legislature. Those belong to our elected state board of education and to our elected local school boards. Some instances that I find not helpful were and this one didn't come out of ours, it was stripped out of another committee, pushing of the Eddie Eagle bill, which allows schools to teach gun safety programs, something they are certainly welcome to do already. But the concerning issue in this was it required a particular curriculum. It required Eddie Eagle be used. Also, the Department of Wildlife's program could be used. And while I trust both of those programs are complete and thorough, it is not our business to be in curriculum decisions. Two other curriculum things that did come out of my committee were the requiring of a civics test, and I don't know if it's going to make the floor, but requiring of financial literacy classes. Again, all of these things are valuable, but our students are getting civics education, and that bill doesn't provide for a civics class. It just requires for a specific test to be administered. Same with financial literacy. We need to look at, like, of the districts I represent, they have 24 credits required to graduate for 2 of them and 23 and a half. So with 28 credits available, I think you're going to be asking some kids between taking calculus or band, orchestra, choir, theater, or meeting the graduation requirement of taking a financial literacy class. And I don't think that the legislature needs to be in that decision at all.
Just real quick, that's part of that theme of power grab, you know, whether they're taking it from the local boards or the state board, they're just all over the place. And I've not seen anything like it. You know, Ed committee is supposed to be for policy and the K-12 is supposed to be for the budget. It's a budgetary committee. And we've passed, you know, a lot of policy out of K-12. And all we did was adopt the governor's budget. We could have wrapped up our work real quick, but instead, you know, we were there till it's a 3:30 committee. And there were several nights where we didn't get out of there till 6 p.m. Discussing, you know, like I say, I touched on the expansion of the tax credit scholarship. They took that from free and reduced lunches to just reduced lunches, which more than doubled the participants that would be eligible at this point. And we never saw a fiscal note for it. There was an estimated fiscal note that blows a hole in the budget. And then the voucher bill, it's just, they call it an educational savings account, and it takes the base state aid for that pupil that chooses to go to a non-public school, and then that money follows them through the treasurer's office. So again, it's putting a lot of work on the treasurer. I'm not going to say it's a power grab to the treasurer's office, but it's a lot of work that our current state treasurer wrote an op-ed about how this is a bad idea and you're not going to be able to, you know, anticipate the fiscal impact of it. So I don't know. Yeah, this has not been a good year for public schools in the state of Kansas as far as the legislature, in my concern.
I would just chime in that in the Senate, we passed on Wednesday, we passed the civics requirement that is, I think, similar, identical to what was on the House. I voted against it. There was an amendment that passed that added the financial literacy component. And the reason I voted against it was exactly what the representatives have said. I don't have a problem with civics education. I don't have a problem with the civics test, but we are not the entity that should be making those decisions. We have elected leaders both at our local school board level and on our state board of education that they are tasked with by the state constitution with making those sorts of decisions, which are curriculum decisions. And if that was something they came up with, obviously that is their prerogative and that is the area that they have expertise in. I just thought it was completely inappropriate for us as the legislature to be dictating to these other bodies that were elected by the same voters that elected all of us to make those decisions. I just did not think it was an appropriate decision for us to be making as a legislature. Those are decisions that are best left to local school districts and to our state board of education.
I am a Blue Valley parent of a student with a disability, which will make it impossible for them to attend in-person school until they are eligible for vaccines. How can he obtain a free and appropriate public education without mitigation measures like the mask mandate?
I'll speak up since I have Blue Valley in my district. That's an excellent question. I think our teachers have gone above and beyond to reach every student during this pandemic. It's been extremely difficult. I teach piano, so I did quite a span of online teaching, and it worked a lot better than I thought it would, but it's very difficult. And my students don't have learning impediments. I'm extremely concerned about the moves to try to pull mask mandates and other public health measures out of the county in general and our schools in specific. And I just wonder if removing mask mandates in the school does actually violate your students' rights as a special needs students to a free, appropriate education. And I hope if this would get past the school board level or even at the school board level, I hope that they're going to keep in mind our students that cannot come to school unless school is a safe and healthy place for them. And think about who's really suffering the most in our current scenarios. And again, I just want to say, I am so appreciative of our teacher force, our school boards who have just worked to make it through this pandemic the best way they can, using the best scientific methods that we have available to keep our students safe and our teachers safe and our staff safe. And if sometimes those measures were more than you felt necessary, I think you have to remember, we, like at the school board level, we have a number of school board members that have young children. And were something to happen to a child, God forbid, a child would contract COVID and die, that's on their head if they weren't as careful as they felt they needed to be. And better to err on the side of being too careful than letting things go a little wild and free. And then we're hearing stories of children and staff members becoming seriously ill because they did not have a safe learning environment.
What political moves are you making to ensure that minorities in Kansas are not subjected to unjust and unethical law enforcement tactics?
I can start. So the governor put together the Commission on Racial Justice, and they put out a really wonderful report on recommendations for the legislature and other governing bodies. And a couple of those recommendations have come up this year, which I've been excited to see. Senator Aletha Fausto is really a leader on racial justice issues, and she's put together a maternal mortality bill that I don't believe has yet had a hearing in the Senate, but I think that's an extremely important issue. And she's been a huge advocate for that. So hopefully we see progress on that bill. And then on the House side, Representative Gail Finney has also been a huge advocate for racial justice. And her big priority has been a driver's license bill that removes or prevents law enforcement from taking someone's driver's license for failure to pay fines or fees. And we actually just saw a variation of that bill in the House, and it passed almost unanimously. So I just want to give a big shout out to those advocates in particular for their work on racial justice. We've seen a couple other racial justice bills. No-knock warrants was one. I don't believe that has gotten a hearing. And then and then the Crown Act was also reintroduced this year, I think also by Senator Fausto, to prevent hair discrimination for individuals as well. So those are some big ones. I know that those don't all tie to law enforcement, but there has been a lot of talk about how can we bring racial justice to Kansas through state legislation.
I would offer, we've done a couple sort of very small bore things in the Senate Judiciary Committee, nothing that really I think meets the moment or meets where we need to be as far as the real systemic changes that I think, a lot that are necessary. So we have done things that have kind of nibbled at the edges, like increasing the availability of diversion programs. So folks are not having, if they're able to successfully complete these programs, they don't have a criminal record that could impede them from getting a job for a number of years because they have to, list this criminal record. It allows them to go through the diversion and have that record expunged. So we've done some small things like that. But one thing I would always remind folks whenever I have this conversation is that so much of law enforcement and policing is inherently a local issue. And so it's something that I think all of us can do and have an impact on at a more local level, because that is really where a lot of decisions that involve the day-to-day of policing and law enforcement happen. So I would encourage everybody who has an interest in that, not only to reach out to us at the state level, but also to talk to folks who are on your city council and mayors, because they're able to, in many cases, have more of a direct impact than we are able to at a state level, because they actually supervise the local police departments who are in our communities.
I don't have too much to add to, and like was mentioned before, that it's not necessarily law enforcement related, but we have a state child death review board that puts out an annual report, and it goes through every child death in the state of Kansas. And there's no race column in our report. There are in other states. And I think, back to the maternal issue that the representative and senators are working on, I think, the SIDS and the youth statistics would be valuable as well to have broken down into those. And that's something I intend to keep working on next year.
What are you doing to ensure the people that the threat of gun violence in public environments will not occur?
This hasn't really impacted my legislative life, but in my personal life, I'm a strong advocate for gun safety legislation, for common sense gun laws. So for instance, we currently have a bill that's working its way, I think, through the House committees that would complete the next step of the domestic abuser weapon relinquishment law. So currently, I think it was passed 2 years ago, maybe even 4. We have a law that says if you are a convicted domestic abuser, you cannot own a weapon until you have resolved your legal issues and taken care of that. And so what this bill would do would allow law enforcement to come in to those who are convicted domestic abusers and get them to relinquish their weapons until their legal issues are resolved. Domestic abuse, of course, is a horrible problem, and the odds of the victim being killed skyrocket when a weapon is involved. Another thing I do in my regular life is I work as a Be Smart advocate, which is mainly, online right now. And that is to reinforce the importance that it is the adult's responsibility to store weapons safely so that our children do not accidentally stumble upon a weapon and end up harming themselves or a friend. So I have spoken to that on the House floor when we had a bill come up. It was about the gun safety program. And I just think we need to keep a watch on and remind our legislators that common sense gun laws are not extreme and they're not infringing on Second Amendment rights. Of course, we all have the right to own guns and use them responsibly, but the responsibly part is really important.
I would just add that with the current composition of the legislature, we've mostly seen an attempt to expand access to guns in our communities. We did see a lowering of the age for concealed carry. We also saw the Eddie Eagle bill that Representative Featherston had mentioned. So unfortunately, it's been really hard to push for common sense gun reform. The former bill that was mentioned was brought by Representative Hoy, who was the previous chapter leader or county leader, I believe, for Moms Demand Action, and does a phenomenal job advocating for common sense gun reform. I think the only other thing that we've really seen that could potentially aid in this endeavor is one that actually just got amended to the budget, and the budget was a Frankenstein bill and not something that I love either. But one thing that got amended was actually lowering the price for permits, which at first seems a little worrisome, but then statistics show that that will actually increase the amount of people who are willing to get trained and get their permit. So by increasing permitting, hopefully we can increase the amount of people who safely carry guns. But for the most part, we haven't seen much legislation that actually will lead to common sense gun reform, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would just echo that I'm a co-sponsor of the Senate version of the bill that Representative Featherston and Representative Vaughn have talked about, where trying to get guns out of the hands of convicted domestic abusers. I'm proud to co-sponsor that legislation. We've been working to try to get a hearing on that bill in the Senate and have been unable to get one from Republican leadership, but we're going to continue to keep pushing on that. And in the Senate, we're going to be hearing the Eddie Eagle and debating the Eddie Eagle gun safety bill on the Senate floor next week. I'm going to be voting against it for the reasons, again, that everybody has already stated.
If I could chime back in on Eddie Eagle, I would like to point out there was an amendment offered removing the requirement of which gun safety program had to be used. And that amendment was soundly rejected along partisan lines. So you have to really wonder what's the real purpose here if they won't accept any curriculum that has been proven effective. Why is that?
These legislative coffee sessions are very informative and much appreciated. I'm curious to understand why Republican representatives and senators rarely to never attend. And then I have another question, kind of piggybacking from a different person. As a Republican, I feel like most of you here today don't really represent me. What are you doing to represent those of us who are Republicans?
As I understand it from the email I got, every representative in the Johnson County area and senator was invited to attend. So I can't say what the motivation of people would be to not attend. I feel like especially in the pandemic situation, this is probably the best way for people to hear from us. So I can't speak to the motives of others. I can only speak to my motives. I can say for representing Republicans, there's no way I win my district without winning unaffiliated and Republican votes too. So I think winning indicates that there are plenty of middle of the road, moderate Republicans who share the same values of valuing our schools, valuing common sense budgets. I do read every one of my emails and file them. I don't just randomly delete. I read everything. I try to respond if I have a meaningful response, but and as far as like getting calls for constituent help, say with Department of Labor or with access to COVID vaccines, I certainly never look up the party affiliation of any constituent who reaches out to me for help. I have no idea if the person I've been working with for months is a Republican, Democrat, voter, non-voter. That is irrelevant when somebody comes to me for help in really important situations like this.
And I would just add, as a new legislator, I think I was really surprised by the amount of bipartisan legislation that we actually pass. And, I think we talk a lot about the hot button issues, which are important. And I think that's what people are really interested to learn about too. But as someone who came in from got really involved from a partisan angle, I've been kind of pleasantly surprised that there is a way to build bridges through the bipartisan policy that we all advocate for, and that makes common sense. But I would also add, I think everyone here and everyone in the Johnson County delegation that I know, Republican and Democrat, is very friendly and very excellent with constituent services and willing to talk to any of their constituents. So if there are any concerns you have or anything you want to talk to with your representative, I think any of us would love to to have a conversation with you and learn more about the issues that you care about. And I think, I don't know if through this forum, or we can put it in the chat, but I would be happy to share my email and my office phone number for anyone who would be interested in reaching out. Because I think that, you know, we represent you all. So we want to know what you care about, and regardless of your party. And so, yeah, I encourage you to do that if you're interested. Thank you.
I'd just like to agree with everything that was just said and everything said by the speaker before. You don't get anything done if you don't work with other people. And I've been approached by constituents that, you know, have more knowledge upon an issue than I do. And I'm always happy to be educated. You know, if somebody really wants to get to the meat of why they feel passionate about why they feel, or whatever issue they're speaking of. And I've never, you know, looked up to see if they were Democrat, unaffiliated, Republican. My job is to represent the House District 24, not just the Democrats in House District 24. So yeah, I'd say reach out. You know, if you don't feel like you're being represented, then let your representative know. And all of our emails and office numbers are public. And I do try to respond to emails that are written in a personal manner, you know, with a direct question. I don't get around to responding to every email, but if a constituent needs help or they've got a special issue to them, I'd like to hear more about it.
So I would say that, you know, for me at least, it's a balancing act. So I'm really proud I've co-sponsored legislation in the Senate that is bipartisan, broad number of Republican, very conservative Republicans that would reduce the sales tax on disabled military veterans in our state, which is something I think it's kind of the least we can do for folks who've given so much to our country. That's a bipartisan bill. I've also been the co-sponsor and am the co-sponsor of a bill that I'm hopeful we're going to hear on the Senate floor this week that would reduce the property tax burden on our seniors, so they're more likely to be able to stay in their home. That again is a broad bipartisan bill that I've been a co-sponsor of and have worked on. Worked on a common sense worker safety measure that I drafted, and I worked with the conservative Republican chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. It was passed out unanimously, Republican and Democrat out of that committee. Worked with the conservative Republican chair of the House Transportation Committee to get that bill passed out of the House Transportation Committee. But at the same time, when there are things like voter suppression bills, when there are things like damaging cuts to our public education, when there are things like the transgender bill that I think will really harm LGBT youth, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to speak out against those. And I think that that is what our community has expressed to me that they want to see, which is fully funded schools, a more just community, making sure that we're taking care of vulnerable children and making sure that everybody has the right to vote.
What is being done to reduce the grocery sales tax?
This week, when we heard the budget bill, which that bill is concerning to say the least because it's not fiscally responsible, there was an amendment offered to reduce the grocery sales tax by 2% to our lowest earners in Kansas. So that was an excellent opportunity for everybody to stand up for our poor Kansans and those who really need help, especially in these hard economic times. And that amendment was soundly defeated on partisan lines. So that's disappointing. And it's something we're just going to have to keep coming around the corner on from every angle to try to help out Kansans.
I would just add, so there has been an effort to eliminate or reduce the food sales tax on food for a couple of sessions now, and there has been a lack of interest by the leadership in both chambers, I believe, which has been frustrating. So some of us have been trying to find ways to kind of chip away at it. And so one bill I did introduce this year was eliminating the sales tax on food purchased at farmers market to both support our local producers and make it cheaper to buy local. So that has not got a hearing, but there are some efforts that we're attempting to push through bills like that to kind of work at this over time. And it is an amendment we do appreciate and bring often when it comes to tax bills. I think overall there is a hesitancy to hear or to work sales tax exemptions. And it is a little frustrating for me because the budget or the tax bill that we did just pass has a few $1 million. I'm not remembering the exact number, but in tax credits for multinational corporations. So I really think that money should be staying here and that we should be providing relief for regressive taxes in Kansas. So I think that's something we'll all continue to push for, and hopefully we can make progress on it in the coming future.
Yeah, I'll just give you the Cliff's Notes version of what I tell the Senate Tax Committee all the time, which is I just think we are really overweighted in what we're doing for giant multinational companies, most of whom create very few jobs in Kansas, and the amount of tax relief they're getting and the amount of tax relief that the wealthiest Kansans are getting in comparison to what we are trying to do for middle class and working families. And so I just think food sales tax is a big part of that. I just think more broadly, we are really out of balance in what we're doing from a tax policy perspective and how we're weighing things. And I think we're way too heavy on the multinational wealthy Kansan side when it comes to tax breaks, and we're not doing enough for middle class and working families. And I think we need to get a better balance. We've been trying to increase the standard deduction much more generously than either the House or the Senate bill did, in a way that would be really broad-based and impactful for working families. We've been trying to provide food sales tax relief, but it seems like in Topeka, the loudest voices tend to be those that represent giant multinational companies and ultra wealthy Kansans. But that is certainly a fight that we're going to continue to take on.
My question went away. Okay, there we go. It was reported late Thursday that Kansas expects to lose about $120 million in tax revenues every year for the next 3 years because of a change in federal policies on COVID-19 relief for businesses. This report combines estimates from the state's Department of Revenue as well as the governor's budget director, and is a result of Congress creating a new income tax deduction for businesses that received federal Paycheck Protection Program loans. This news comes as your Republican colleagues desperately want to cut income taxes without addressing the highest food sales tax rate in the country or property tax imbalances. Could you comment on this?
Just to kick the conversation off, I was frustrated on the House because, there is that the Paycheck Protection Program loans are non-repayable, which I think has been a great benefit for our businesses and has been really an asset for those people, or for those small businesses to stay afloat in Johnson County. In the House, though, the tax bill that we just passed allows them to double dip by making those loans non-repayable, but then also allowing them to deduct them from their taxes. So they get the deduction and they don't have to pay back the tax. So, or the loan. So I think that, again, it's another example of we have to support our small businesses, and they have seen a huge difficulty throughout all of COVID-19. We need to help them stay open, but then we also need to support working families. So it's really a balance, and I think it's been a little bit skewed mostly towards the multinational corporations when, again, those small businesses really need our help, and so do our families and our working families. So I would just add that part. I think that was something that frustrated me in this last tax bill, and that was heavily talked about. So others may have other additions to that, but it is a problem, and I had hoped that we would see more of a balance in our tax bill that came through the House.
Okay. Following along after legislation is important, as you all have recommended. It is part of how we stay aware and engaged as citizens. However, what do the four of you suggest we do as citizens to proactively, prior to passage, before the damage is codified?
So depending upon, what committees some bills are going through, sometimes you don't get an opportunity to get ahead of it. Sometimes they spring up, 24 hours beforehand. I will say that the WebEx committee meetings have made, getting your testimony submitted quite a bit easier because you don't have to, from Johnson County, make the hour plus trip there to get your testimony turned in at 8 a.m. for the day of, and then take half the day off of work to travel and testify. So I will say that I think the COVID has made the committee room more accessible for the general population. But just get comfortable with the website, I would think would be the easiest thing to do, because that's going to be your quickest update if you don't have direct access to committee leadership. And sometimes committee leadership, as ranking on the Children and Seniors Committee, my chair and my vice chair and I have always gotten along regardless of who they were or what portion of the political spectrum they've fallen on. But I know that's not true for every committee leadership team. So again, get a hold of a committee member if you can. If not, just visit that website.
Another thing you could do is find your local group that advocates for things you value. For, like, if in the environment is your thing, find the Sierra Club, Climate Action KC, a group that advocates for that. If education is your driving force, find your local school district's advocacy group and sign up for their emails, for the alerts, follow their social media, because they do watch what's going on very carefully, and they will send out action alerts to let you know that this bill is on the horizon. Contact your legislator, contact the legislators on that committee. And it really does mean a lot more if you send a real email from you as opposed to the auto fill in. And even more, if your auto fill in does not indicate where you live, it really drops down in the rankings of value and what we can attend to. When I had 50 emails dump into my email overnight on the school issue, not one of those people lived in my district. And once we're on the House floor, I need to be working for my district. In committee, I need to be representing more than just my district, but find your local group and let them help you stay involved.
Alrighty, well, we've got a little bit more time, so I'm gonna pull one more question and make that the last question. This was supposed to be the last one. Can you discuss the upcoming vote on the amendment to the Kansas Constitution? We are presuming it means the abortion amendment.
Yeah, I would be happy to talk about this. I spoke against this on the floor, and I'm strongly against the abortion amendment. So what the amendment would do, for those who don't know, it would amend our state constitution to explicitly say that people do not have the right to an abortion, which codifies a lot of the previous anti-abortion and anti-choice legislation that has been previously passed and is currently unconstitutional under the Hodes decision. So it would codify that law, and it would prevent future legislation or would encourage future legislation that is also anti-choice from being passed as well. So that amendment is going on the ballot in August of 2022, which is traditionally a low turnout ballot. But we would for people who care about that issue, and I think for have a voice on the issue, encourage you to participate in that election. It is a ballot initiative, or not ballot initiative in the standard term, but it will be on the ballot as a nonpartisan issue. So even if you're a registered independent, Republican, Democrat, you will all be able to vote on that in that ballot. So encourage you to mark that on your calendars. And I think just as another point, that would not create exemptions for abortions in cases of rape, incest, or the endangerment of the mother's life. And that was an amendment we brought on the House floor to ensure that was codified. That was rejected. So even in those cases, a woman may not be able to get an abortion and her life could be in danger. So those were some key points of that, but I would be happy to take other questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are officially out of time. We're a minute over. So I want to thank everyone for attending. We did, of course, have more questions than we could ask. I always email a follow-up with the contact information for all the legislators that participated today, as well as all of the legislators that participate in any of the sessions, and some how you can find who your legislator is or other contact information. So I'll send that out later today. One more time, thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate it. Go enjoy the day. It's beautiful out. Thank you.
Fabulous. Good job, Ashley.
Thank you.
You're muted.
I was gonna say we just move everyone to the waiting room and message them that we're done. They're sticking around so we can. All right, that's everyone. Okay. Anything of note? The font was this time a little small for me, so if we could, I at the end of
This?
no,
Oh,
not
these
yours.
backwards?
In the
Okay, yeah,
in
that was 10. Okay, I'll make it bigger next time.
yeah. I mean, I could still read it and I can remember to change it myself, but I was like, I'm tripping up a lot, and I was like, oh, it's because as I'm trying to go back and forth. it
Okay,
was just
I'll
little-
fix that.
Are these backwards to you?
Mm-mm.
Okay, good. They're backwards to me and I was like, I hope people can read them.
I noticed that. That's what I noticed last time too. And it was
It's
when I
backwards.
did it.
It's
To
backwards.
me, it was backwards, but to you guys, apparently. It
Okay,
wasn't.
yeah, the self view is flipped and so I didn't know what you all were seeing.
No, we had
Okay.
tested it before, so I wasn't worried, but
I figured you would have sent me something if it was backwards, but I
Yeah.
couldn't find any way to change it even if it was. I think that's only the host that can flip.
I didn't realize
maybe
that
it
it was
wasn't.
showing up as backward. Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any problems or anything today? I think
I would just mention, maybe I missed it, but I don't think you said how long they had to answer questions.
Okay. I'll make
So
I
just
have it in my
make sure that-
notes, but
I mean, they seem to know because they all kept it pretty brief, but just in case.
okay, cool. I don't know what I need to do. There's always one little thing that I miss and I don't know what to do. I think I'm just trying to get through it all quickly.
Oh, yeah.
But okay. Did I miss anything else? Did anyone notice?
I thought it went very well.
And also, just to toss out, if I forget something, it's totally fine to message me and just remind me that I forgot to say it, because I can always add it, the next round, before the next question or whatever. Because Julie noticed that I forgot one time to say that we invite everyone. So she messaged me and I was able to get it in that way. So, and that's helpful. But I was hoping I moved my instructions for myself onto a bigger piece of paper, and I was hoping that would mean I missed nothing, but I'm still who I am
Figure it out.
at my
I mean,
core.
they had the time cards. They seem to
Yeah.
figure it out. So
Well, and I sent it before, they've got it on the invitation at some
yeah,
point.
so they seemed to know. I think it's just so the audience knows. But again, they have the time cards they can see, so it's not that big a deal.
But still, it's good for me to know that that was something that I missed when I was trying to, because I don't want to take up a bunch of time with me talking.
And then because I've only been to actually one other coffee that I helped out with, like, I know when they come back and rebut, they only get a minute the second time, but that might be something that I remember you saying it when we did it in person. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't
Really?
think it's come up again. It's just Linda kept doing it and I had to keep remembering to, because I wasn't going to reset my timer. I just had to remember to
Pay
watch
attention.
it.
Okay. Yeah, because if they don't use their full time, we're kind of a little generous, and sometimes if we remember, the timekeeper will start again, but I forgot to cover that with you, but
Well, I kind of knew, and I figured if other people weren't talking, like if only 2 of the 4 answered, It's a little more generous.
Okay, cool. Marie and Debbie, did anything that you noticed?
There was just one thing, somebody edited I was trying to sort and it gave me a message that someone was trying to edit when I was trying to sort. So I'm not sure, that's the first time it happened, but I went ahead and sorted and all hell didn't break loose. So
I wonder if I put a note next to one of them, the federal one, because I was like, should we they could
Yeah.
speak to the topic, but I was hoping there was something that existed. So I wonder if it was when I typed that. I also put in the chat which you caught, that I was going to plug it at the end of them speaking.
yeah.
So it could have been that time too. Those are the only 2 times when I did anything with it.
Yeah, so that was the only weird thing that happened. And then we were debating how to handle ordering, and then you said your question went away. Well, that's what happened. was really, I was running to get it in before you started to ask the question. So
that's funny. Because I was like, yeah, the screen just all of a sudden did a funny thing. Okay, that's funny. All right, but that wasn't a big deal. So cool. Everything seemed to go smooth. So I'll get the email out with all their contact information. And oh, we're recording still. Dang it.
Oops.